Howard Zinn, a 9/22/2010, was a historian, writer, teacher, and activist whose work reshaped the way history is told. Born into a poor family in Brooklyn, he served as a bombardier in World War II, an experience that sparked his deep questioning of war and power. As a professor, he became famous for challenging traditional narratives of American history and for giving a voice to ordinary people who struggled for justice. His groundbreaking book, A People's History of the United States, inspired millions to view the past and the present through the eyes of workers, women, minorities, and activists rather than through the lens of the powerful. From war to curiosity, Howard Zinn's early years were marked by struggle and poverty in Brooklyn, yet he carried a deep belief in justice and freedom. When World War II broke out, like many young men of his generation, he felt it was his duty to serve. He enlisted as a bombardier in the U.S. Air Force, convinced that dropping bombs on enemy soil was part of a noble cause. For a time, he believed the official story, that war was necessary for peace, and violence was the path to liberation. But once in the skies, reality struck him in ways he could not ignore. Flying high above the ground, pressing a button to release bombs felt mechanical, almost distant. Yet Zinn knew that down below, each explosion meant shattered homes, devastated families, and the deaths of people who looked nothing like enemies. Just ordinary men, women, and children. His most haunting mission was near the end of the war, when he took part in a bombing raid on a small French town. The destruction was massive, and later he discovered that it had little military purpose. That knowledge stayed with him like a shadow. The war left Zinn with questions that would not let him rest. Was war really about justice, or was it another face of power? Why were ordinary people always the ones to suffer, while leaders justified their actions with grand speeches? These doubts marked a turning point. Instead of returning home as a hero with unquestioned pride, Zinn returned as a seeker of truth. He realized that obedience without reflection was dangerous, and that curiosity, the courage to ask why, was his only path forward. Rewriting history after the war, Zinn pursued education with relentless energy, eventually becoming a historian and professor. But he soon discovered that the history being taught in classrooms felt hollow. Textbooks celebrated presidents, generals, and businessmen, painting America as a perfect democracy. Yet they glossed over slavery, exploitation, racism, and the resistance of ordinary people. Zinn saw history not as a neutral record, but as a story carefully shaped by those in power. He began to ask a radical question. What if history were told from the perspective of the oppressed instead of the powerful? That question led him to his groundbreaking book, A People's History of the United States, published in 1980. It flipped the narrative upside down. Instead of glorifying Columbus, Zinn exposed the violence and exploitation that came with colonization. Instead of focusing only on presidents and policies, he highlighted the struggles of Native Americans, enslaved Africans, workers on strike, women demanding equality, and soldiers who resisted unjust wars. The book shocked many. Some hailed it as revolutionary, while critics accused Zinn of bias and of undermining patriotism. But he argued that true patriotism was not blind loyalty, it was honesty. History, he said, should not be used to comfort the powerful but to empower the powerless. The book spread widely, embraced by students and activists who had long felt invisible in official accounts. It made history feel alive, like a battleground of voices fighting to be heard. Through this work, Zinn didn't just teach facts, he opened doors. He showed that history is not fixed. It can be rewritten when new truths are uncovered. And he proved that curiosity can change not only how we see the past, but also how we imagine the future. Activist and teacher Howard Zinn was more than a writer of books. He lived his convictions. He became an active participant in the civil rights movement, marching alongside black leaders and risking his safety to stand against segregation in the 1960s. He opposed the Vietnam War, not just from behind a desk, but in public protests, speeches, and writings that challenged government policies head-on. For Zinn, history and activism were inseparable. If the past was filled with struggles for justice, then the present demanded the same courage. In the classroom, he was anything but a traditional professor. Zinn encouraged debate, critical thinking, and even rebellion against blind authority. He urged students not to accept what they read in textbooks without questioning it. To him, education was not about memorizing facts but about awakening minds. His lectures were fiery, passionate, and unforgettable, leaving many students with a lifelong commitment to justice. Zinn also believed democracy was not about obedience to leaders but about the active participation of citizens. He warned that silence in the face of injustice was itself a form of betrayal. Even in his later years, long after retirement, he continued speaking and writing with the same passion as when he was young. When he passed away in 2010, Howard Zinn left behind not just books, but a legacy of action. His life reminds us that to be a teacher is to inspire courage, to be an activist is to embody truth, and to be a citizen is to question power. His story shows that curiosity is not just an intellectual exercise, it is a moral duty.